Okay. Hmm. I see.
There you go, Walt. Can you, are you sharing screen and stuff?
Yes, I will be. You'll need to make me the host.
Okay, yeah, I made you the co-host. So you should, that way you don't have to worry about letting people in the room. I still have access to that. So you should be able to click on the share screen now.
Okay. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Walt, we see it.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. I'm going to give people another another minute, sign on, and then we'll get started. I want to respect your time. I think everyone is muted except me. This is a brief presentation on handling multiple offers because that's kind of the situation we're in a lot these days. And just wanted to go over some highlights that I find helpful. By no means is this the only way to be able to handle multiple offers. I mean, some of you may have experience in that, and that's great. But I just wanted to go over some things that kind of popped up and things that I need you to consider as agents. Because when you have multiple offers, it can be hectic and it can be emotional, right? For the sellers, for the buyers, and the agents. And that's what we're gonna try to talk about a little bit today. So, like I said, with that said, I think we can get started. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to shrink my thing. So, handling multiple offers. I made this PowerPoint recently, and hopefully it covers a lot of the stuff we need to talk about. With me. Things to consider. Time, right? And we're going to talk about each of these individually. The owner preparation. Have you prepared your owner? Who wrote the offer? There's a spreadsheet that we kind of want to talk about. The appraisal can be an issue. The terms, right? What are the terms of your contract? Loan to value and what if? What if things happen? Escalation clauses, and then a net to the owner, which is going to be an important final step in your owner making the decision that is going to ultimately lead to the contract they accept. Time. How long has your property been listed? Right? Is it just come on the market? Because if it has, you may want to give it some time, right? Have you ever noticed that when a bank, when we were in the foreclosure crisis, that the banks would say, no offers accepted for 10 days? And, you know, kind of why do you think they did that? And the reason is because they knew that most likely they had priced the property to sell and that they would be getting multiple offers. So I know, and that's different from the first look program. You know, sometimes in foreclosures, they have this thing called first look, meaning they would allow primary home people to look at the property first. But that's not what I'm talking about. Some banks would come in and they would say, okay, we're not going to take offers for 10 days. And the reason they did that, again, is to allow the property to be shown and have enough time for the players to get in the game. In other words, have enough buyers look at the property. You know, one of the things we tell one of the things I tell my clients that are sellers is that if we don't get activity in the first 30 days, then we're probably overpriced, right? But in today's market, where we are, I mean, we're kind of in a crazy market where we have multiple offers sometimes on the first day or 2 or 3 of the listing. I got a call last week from a girl in our Ocean City office, and she listed a property on Saturday, I believe it was. And by Monday, she had 9 offers. 9 offers. So that could be a little overwhelming. And then sometimes you have to consider too, are there multiple showings? You know, how many have looked at it and how many do you still have to come? If you still have offers coming and request, it may be in your seller's interest to delay making a decision, but you have to look and consider those things. You know, if you list a property today and you get an offer tomorrow and you've got 5 more showings the rest of the week, is it in your seller's best interest to accept the offer that they got first? Now, this recently happened to me. We listed a property. We had a full price offer on the first day with no concessions. So we talked to the seller. The seller said they wanted a little more time. They knew there were other showings coming. So we wanted to make sure that everyone had an opportunity, because what's happening is that properties are actually selling for above asking price. That's what we're seeing. With the multiple offer situation that I talked about, where the agent had 9 offers, you know, 3 of them were cash. One of them was no inspection contingency, and it also had an escalation clause. So, you know, with those type of things, I think the property ended up selling for about $6,000 over the asking price to a cash offer with no inspection contingency. I mean, that's almost a seller's dream, but it's something we have to consider. We'll have a section near the end for questions. So if you have questions, you know, keep them on hold right now. You know, write it down if you lose your thoughts, but, you know, kind of make sure that we're going to be an opportunity to answer the questions. So again, how long has the property been listed, right? Are there multiple showings past and coming? Always first, as far as your job, what is best for your client, right? What is the best thing? The best thing for you as an agent is not how much commission you make, it's how much you allow your seller to make, right? Because you're paid a percentage. I know it doesn't always add up to a lot for a few more $1,000, but to some sellers that can be all the difference, especially when we talk about the net, right? The net sheet to the owner. Okay, so moving on from time. Bear with me. Owner preparation. When you list the property, right? When you list the property, it's important that you talk to your owner. Did you talk to the owner about the possibilities of multiple offers? And are they prepared to consider any and all offers? Today, when you list a property, and when I talk about today, I'm talking about July 1st, 2020, right? When we're in a situation where we have the COVID, we have a lot of things going on in the world, and we have a hot real estate market along the shore. So, you know, we are getting multiple offers. Someone said to me, gosh, you know, are multiple offers the new norm? And the answer could be yes. If you've listed a property and it's priced accordingly, yes, we could definitely be in a multiple offer situation on your property in a very short amount of time. So I do suggest that when you list the properties today, talk to the owners about that possibility. Now, you don't want them to get their feelings hurt if all of a sudden they list a property and they don't get multiple offers, but you need to say that it's a possibility and that the market is going to determine whether you're going to get these multiple offers or not. So again, did you talk to the owner about the possibility of multiple offers when you listed the property? The answer should be yes. Are they prepared to consider any and all offers? And the answer should be yes. We want to make sure they have every opportunity to get the most money they can at the best terms and price. Who wrote the offer? And this is a big one. Are there outside offers? Did you write an offer? And can you be fair? Right? Most likely, you might be one of the people involved in a multiple offer situation. You might be the listing agent as well as the buyer's agent in Delaware. In Maryland, that is not possible because dual agency in Maryland does not allow you to be the dual agent, right? You can't be both. So in that case, you would ask for some help, or the buyer would be unrepresented. But let's talk about Delaware first, because that's where we seem to be having a lot of the multiple offer situations. The agent gets a call, they write an offer, they show the property. Can you be a dual agent in Delaware? Yes. Can it be one person? Yes. What is your responsibility? And this is where agents get nervous. What is my responsibility? What, am I going to get in trouble? Am I being fair? And you got to say to yourself, can I be fair, right? Can I be impartial? And the answer is most of the times, yes, you can, right? You can be fair with the offers. Your biggest responsibility as a dual agent is confidentiality, right? You must keep the information confidential. If your seller says they would take less, you don't tell your buyer. If your buyer says they'll pay more, you don't tell your seller that, right? So it's important you keep confidential information. If you feel nervous about this, reach out to me or one of the leadership personnel in our office that can help you with these. I really think it's fair, and that's what I'm trying to show you with this presentation is how you can be fair in presenting these offers, and that's what we want. We don't want anyone being accused of not being fair or being biased. Of course, you're going to get that anyway, right? That's part of the characteristics of a multiple offer situation. So if someone says to you, are there other offers? You should refer to your listing agreement where it says whether you have the ability to discuss other offers. And if you're not sure, talk to your seller and say, look, do we want to talk about other offers? Do we want to tell people there's a multiple offer situation, or do we want to wait? Now, why would you tell someone that we're in a multiple offer situation? Well, it prepares them to make probably their highest and best. Is it a requirement that you go back and say to the buyers, give me your highest and best? And the answer is no. There is no such requirement, right? Just like there's no requirement for you to accept an offer in a certain time period. If you get an offer that says it has to be accepted by a certain date, it's up to the seller whether they meet that date or not. And if I have multiple offers and I have one trying to push me to accept by 5 o'clock today, it's probably not in their best interest to have that in their offer. And it may be that their offer is void before we even look at all the other offers. And as a buyer's agent, you're probably going to write that in. Oh, I want an answer by today. But it could hurt your buyer, right? It could hurt your buyer by not meeting the time or the time limits of the seller, right? He does not have to accept your offer, and your offer becomes automatically rejected by not getting a response. So it's important that you look at those limitations. So if I told a bunch of agents that, hey, we're in a multiple offer situation, that's great. You may want to give it your highest and best. I'm expecting more offers. That's kind of one of the things that could be to your advantage. Why would you not do that? And the answer would be, maybe your seller doesn't want to do that. Maybe your seller wants that the buyers not to know because he's afraid to lose buyers, right? Have you ever had a buyer say to you, oh, I don't want to get in a bidding war, right? Because a multiples offer situation really reflects an auction or a bidding war. That's what an auction is. Hey, bidder, can I get a bid? And who's going to bid the best and highest, right? That's kind of what a multiple offer situation is. So you need to talk to your seller. What's in your best interest? In most cases, I would want to know, if I was a buyer's agent, if there's a multiple offer situation so that I can prepare my buyer for what's about to happen. And that is, we're going to be in a bidding war. You need to give it your best shot. You know, I always say to my buyers, you know, when we get in those situations, I say, how bad do you want it, right? How bad do you want this property? Is it worth paying more than the asking price? If you don't get this property, will you be okay? And can we look for other properties? Or is this the one you absolutely have to have? And if it is, we need to consider that when we write this offer so that you will be in the best position to at least have a shot at getting the property. So again, who wrote the offer? Are there outside offers? Probably. Did you write an offer? Maybe. Can you be fair? Yes. You have to put the money aside, right? Remember that there's a phrase that I like to say, and that is, by helping others, you help yourself. By helping the seller look at all the offers fairly, you're going to help yourself, your reputation, and possibly your buyer. But you have to be unbiased, right? In Maryland, let's switch to the other side of Fenwick. In Maryland, if you get multiple offers and you have a buyer that wants you to write an offer, what do you have to do? You have to tell them that they're going to be unrepresented. And you would have to have them sign the understanding agency form that just confirms that they know that you are the seller's agent. What does that require you to do? It requires you to be fair with them, and it requires you to keep the information confidential, just like it does in Delaware. That was a law change that took place last year that made any information that a person tells you confidential unless they tell you otherwise. So now it applies to Maryland as well as Delaware. It used to be in Maryland, if you worked for the seller and someone told you something, it wasn't considered confidential information. At an open house, that's why you have a house, the sign in Maryland that says who you represent, because information at open houses is not considered confidential unless they start to talk detail and about an offer. And at that point, they need to sign the understanding agency. And from then on, the information is considered confidential. They tell you, and you must keep it as such. Okay. So can you be fair? You have to be as fair as you can. And that's kind of why we're having this, this discussion this morning, because I want to try to help you attain that. So here's what I'd like to use. And this is probably the best tool. The spreadsheet of offers, right? I'm going to write at the top, offer 1, offer 2, offer 3, 4, and 5, and so on and so on, right? And I'm going to describe it maybe as, you know, offer from John, offer from Lingo, offer from Caldwell Banker, whatever. I'm going to mark the offers across the top, right? I'm going to try to be fair. I don't want to put my offer. That would not be a good title for an offer at the top. You would just want to list the offers. Maybe you list the buyer's names, right? Or the, that would probably be one of the fairest ways to do it. And then below that, you're going to put in the price here for one offer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so on. The next line, cash of, it should say or loan. I'm sorry, typo. Is it cash or is there a loan? And if it's cash, I'm going to write below here, cash, loan, right? LTV, what's the loan to value, right? Is this, if cash, it's going to be, it doesn't matter. It's going to be 0, right? If it's an offer, maybe it's first time home buyer, it could be 99%. It could be 100%. If it's VA, it could be 105%, right? If it's conventional, it could be 80%. So again, what is the, is it cash or is it a loan? And what is, and then again, what is the LTV, right? What's the settlement date, all right? This is an important term. If I have a seller and the settlement date is less than 30 days, can they move, right? Can your people move that quick? Do they need more time? Or do they want it done in 2 weeks? Now, keep in mind, right now, what I'm hearing from the title companies is that they're having a hard time getting title work back in less than 30 days. We had a settlement delayed this week because the title work was not back for Sussex County. There's a major backup. The title companies are swamped, right? So make sure that your settlement date is realistic, right? It could be 30 days, but you also have to have that talk with your seller, right? How much time do you need? Do you live there? Is it a vacation rental, or is the rental income a factor, right? All these things become important with the settlement date. So again, that's something you want to consider. Oh, sorry, I gotta, give me 1 second. I want to go back. Oh, I did go back. Bear with me. There we go. Concessions, right? Are there any concessions with offer 1? Are there concessions with offer 2? Offer 3? You know, is someone asking for closing help? Are they first-time home buyers? Is there other things, right? Other concessions that are that they want the seller to make? Do they want the rental income, right? And again, it says settlement date, time, and again, this is just a reiteration of what's the best time for your seller, right? We know what the settlement date is here on this one, but on this one, maybe we write down the seller's ultimate settlement date of what is best for them, right? Maybe they need 60 days, maybe they want it done in 30 days, but you want to put it, and then an inspection, right? What's the inspection, right? Is there inspection? You could put yes or no, right? Are there multiple inspections, right? These are all things you kind of want to put in this section under inspections. And then the bottom line is the net to the owner. After it's all said and done, how much is your seller going to walk away with? Because that's really what they want to know, right? They want to know, how much money am I going to get, right? And we're going to talk about that a little more in detail. Keep in mind, one of the things that's super important is that whenever you give a number to the seller that says net to owner, right? You want it to say estimate only, right? Because it's not the true bottom line. It is an estimate based on your experience. And let's talk about that. You know, what is it? So we have price, right? Is there a loan to value? What's the settlement date? What are the concessions would come off, right? And inspections, what do you think they might have to deal with? Is there going to be a septic issue, right? And then what is the mortgage, right? And I can tell you that most sellers don't know exactly what their mortgage is. I'm going to tell you a story. I had a property recently where it was inherited by 2 brothers, and we were selling the property, and they were going to walk away the proceeds minus commission. Right? It was in Delaware, so they had a 2% transfer tax. They told me not until after we listed the property and had an offer on the table that had been signed, they told me they hadn't paid the taxes in Delaware for 10 years. And I was like, oh my goodness. So those in Delaware ended up being $7,500. Okay. So that cut into her proceeds quite a bit. They also did not tell me that one of the brothers had an IRS lien from 2013, which at that time was $11,000. Fast forward from 13 to 2020, 11,000 becomes 18,000. So here, I didn't know. I told them, I said, well, you're going to pay. And then then all of a sudden we get hit with the no taxes being paid and the IRS loan. It did go to settlement, but at one point the seller said, we're just going to walk. We're not going to show up for settlement because we're just not getting enough money. And it turned into a mess. But the thing is, that's why the estimate is important, that you say it's an estimate, because I had no idea. I didn't do a title search, right? There was no lien that showed in the tax records on the property. you know, it's a wonder they still even had the property that it wasn't foreclosed on. So anyway, things to think about. Appraisal. Will the property appraise for the sales price, right? Will the property appraise? I mean, that's going to be a huge question in a multiple offer. Does the offer ask for or require an appraisal, right? You know, with a cash offer, we don't always get appraisals. Some agents say, well, you know, I need to protect my buyer and make sure that they get an appraisal. If I'm in a multiple offer situation and there's an appraisal requirement versus another cash offer that doesn't have one, I think, which one do you think is going to be better? The one without the appraisal requirement. And the other thing is, will the property appraise? When you list the property, hopefully you've done some kind of CMA or have comps or something that supports the price that you are suggesting that they list for. You know, and again, do you think it's going to appraise for that? One thing that I want to point out is that there is this realtor resource called RPR. RPR is a free service to realtors, and it gives you a valuation on the property. It at least gives you some kind of starting point. If you run a report on the property, it's about 42 pages. It will also tell you if you're in a flood zone. It's a very useful tool. When I talk about it in classes, I ask people how many people use RPR. And if I have a class of 10, I'll get 3 people raise their hand. It's a great resource. You should go to it. Again, it's RPR, Realtor Property Resource. It's free if you're a realtor. You should sign up. You have to set up a profile. They have an app on your phone that is very helpful and useful, but at least it gives you some kind of basis. If you run a report, it's usually got 42 pages with comps, trends, what's going on in the location where the property is. So again, it gives you an idea of what the property is worth if you have no idea. Hopefully you have some, and you know, when we go to these listing appointments, before I tell a seller what it's worth, I always try to ask them if they know what it's worth and what they think it's worth. Because if I'm going to a listing appointment, right, and I think it's worth 400 and they tell me 380, I know my job is a little easier, right? But if I go to a listing appointment and I think it's worth 400 and they tell me it's worth 480, then I know that I have my job cut out for me and that there's going to be an issue about price, right? So it's what you want to, will it appraise though, right? And does your multiple offer situation, which one requires an appraisal and which one is an absolute must on an appraisal, right? First time home buyer is an absolute must. It's going to have to appraise, right? Someone putting down a large chunk of money, the appraisal process is still important, but it may not be as important if they meet certain thresholds, like they don't borrow over 80% or they have the ability to put down more money. And then a cash deal, even though it may be subject to an appraisal, you know, that's going to have to be a bridge you cross when you get there. Or you can just say, look, we're in a multiple offer situation. Part of our counter offer is accepting the offer that's cash and saying we're not going to accept an appraisal contingency, because you already have multiple offers. So it kind of gives you an idea that the market feels that the property is worth, which we've put it on the market for, right? So something to think about, the appraisal. Terms: cash, concessions, time, and net, right? These are the terms of your offer, right? What is it, cash or is it a loan? What are the concessions? What you're seller being asked to do, and then the time, and then the net to the owner. It's kind of like the same that we talked about on the spreadsheet, but these are things that you need to consider and to talk about with your seller, right? Because these are what's important. This is what's important to your seller right here. How much cash am I getting? What are the concessions? How soon am I getting money? And how much am I going to get? Those are really the terms that you need to be prepared to, on each offer. Now, one of the things that scares me sometimes is that I'll get an agent that says, Walt, I didn't read the offer all the way. They put it in a different section. So when you're in a multiple offer situation, it is even more important that you look and read every contract and have a notepad next to you that you make notes on. Or if you need to, print out the offers and mark them and circle or highlight, whatever you need to do. A lot of, in Delaware, Section 32 is a big section where people write in things. In Maryland, they use an addendum called the buyer seller contribution addendum, I think is what it's called. Or they use a blank addendum. So it's important that you look at every piece of paper that's attached to that offer so that you can come up, because the last thing you want to do is have your offer verbally accept an offer and then they get to the terms and they've missed some kind of concession or some kind of inspection or some kind of other term or request by the buyer that wasn't noted or was considered somewhat out of the ordinary. Okay, so it's important that you consider and read, please read all the offers and look at them. And if you're not sure, have someone else look at them as well. Loan to value and what if? What if the property doesn't appraise, right? If the property doesn't appraise, you may have to go back and renegotiate, or maybe you took a backup offer. If the property doesn't appraise, does your seller have to sell if the buyer can't perform? The answer is no. Your seller has the right to say, I'm sticking to this price, and if you can't do it, we're going to go back to the other offers. Recently, this happened in Maryland. There was a property listed in Ocean Pines for, I want to say, $620. They got 2 full price offers with escalation clauses. One of the offers was from our agency, Keller Williams, and our offer was rejected. It was accepted in-house. The property settled 6 weeks later. It was, again, listed for $620. It settled for $580. And our agent was very upset, understandably. The buyer was upset, understandably. They felt that their offer had not been presented. They had actually requested that the seller reject their offer, and that didn't happen. You need to know that NAR changed the ethics requirement in 2019 that says if an agent asks you for a rejection, you must provide one from the seller. That verifies that the seller saw the offer. So in this case, the seller did not reject the offer. I called the broker and said, we feel that maybe the seller didn't see our offer. Well, it came down to the appraisal. The property appraised for $580. The seller, instead of going back to our original buyer, which they could have done, because I do believe our original buyer would have paid that money regardless of the appraisal, because they had more cash on hand, but the agent didn't present it that way. And the agent, who happened to be an in-house sale, a dual agency, had the seller accept the lower appraised value, which is an option, right? It's truly, we are messengers, right? It's truly the seller's decision, okay? And then it says here, what about an addendum to address the appraisal? And what that would say was like, if the property does not appraise, the buyer is willing to continue with up to a certain percent over the appraised value. So if that may have made the difference for that offer that I just discussed. If the buyer had put in there that they were willing to buy the property up to 125% above the appraised value, that may have made the difference in which offer they accepted, considering if both offers were the same. How would you do that? You would write that in a blank addendum, and you would make sure that you understand it, and this is where it gets a little complicated, your buyer understands. If the property appraised, let's use simple numbers, we have $100,000 and the property is the sales price and the property appraised for 80, that the seller would be willing, or the buyer would be willing to pay the difference above and beyond, even though they would only get a loan based on the appraised value. So if they got a loan based on $80,000, the extra 20 would have to be above and beyond their required down payment for an $80,000 loan. So you have to make sure that your buyer understands that they would need that amount of cash. And the reason I say that is because there are a lot of buyers out there with cash and with extra cash. So it seems to be the norm to have big down payments or buyers that have the resources to put more money down. So you would definitely want to consider that. This could be an option to give you an advantage if you're in a multiple offer situation. You could have this discussion with your buyer about paying more than the appraised value. It's something to consider, but it is happening, and I have seen that. And it seems to be a new trend, not necessarily in our area, but in the rest of the country. I have seen people talking about it. Actually, I saw this on a bold Facebook platform, and they were talking about this type of, they called it an AD, and I think I think that stood for additional down, meaning additional down payment. And I looked it up further, and I couldn't really come up with an addendum to that, but basically it's this number 3 here. If the property does not appraise, the buyer is willing to continue with the offer up to a certain amount over the appraised value. So anyway, food for thought, outside the box a little bit. Escalation clauses. What if you use one? Okay, if you're in a multiple offer situation, it's very common to use an escalation clause that says your buyer will pay so much, so let's say $1,000 above and beyond the final offer or the next highest offer up to a certain amount. Now, here's the problem that we've been seeing is that we'll have offers with multiple escalation clauses. So does that automatically jump them up? It could, right? If you have an escalation clause that said we'll go 1,000 beyond and we'll go 20,000 over the asking price, and then you have another offer that says they'll go above and beyond and they'll go 19,000 over the asking price, you've kind of just jumped to the 20,000 above the asking price because you have two offers that are competing and they've automatically bid each other up. Now, you would want to verify the final price in writing, right? You would want to go back to them. Do you have to show the offers? You're supposed to, but you would not want to show the name of the buyers or maybe some other things. You could just show the front page with the buyer's name whited out and just show a price. But you would need your seller's permission to do that, right? If your seller says, no, I don't want to share that, that could nullify your escalation clause. If your buyer is saying, look, I want to see it and I want to see it in writing, and it depends on what the escalation clause says. Make sure you read your escalation clause. Make sure you understand it. Make sure you have a thorough understanding of what's expected in an escalation clause, how high your buyer will go. Is it dependent on appraisal, or are they willing to pay above and beyond, even though it may not appraise? Again, the verification of the final price. If I was a buyer and I was in a multiple offer situation and they came back to me and said, okay, we're at the top of your escalation clause, I would definitely want to see something that pushed me up there. Not that I don't trust the other agents, but let's face it, some of us know of agents that we don't trust. And unfortunately, that is a fact in the business that we're in. And it's important that we try to do the best we can. That's why the statute of fraud requires everything to be in writing. And that's why it's important that we be fair and honest, treat all parties that way, but also keep confidential information confidential. And I think that's it. Right, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, no, let's go. Net to owner. Right, price, commission, concessions, transfer tax and fees, payoff, how many loans, any liens. and then the estimated net. Again, it says estimated net, right? Make sure you use that word estimated, right? Because you come to the bottom line, you say, oh, you're going to get, 150,000 and it's 143 because something was missed or their payoff wasn't what it was, or there was some kind of a repair addendum. They're going to remember what you told them when they accepted the offer. So make sure you tell them, look, this is an estimate based on what we have in front of us. Things could change. That's why it's an estimate only, right? Price minus commission, minus concessions, minus transfer tax and fees, minus payoff. How many loans? Ask, and you have to ask hard questions, right? You have to say, do you have any loans that we're not aware of? Do you have any liens do you have an IRS lien? Do you have any child alimony payments that are going to hold you up? Any judgments against you, right? Those are questions that, and most of the time the answer is going to be no. But if you don't ask and they say, well, you didn't ask me that, sometimes those are hard questions and sometimes we forget. Oh, I forgot to ask if they have an IRS lien. When you find out when they do the title search, right? And the IRS has attached something to the property. At that point, you might as well get an extension because then you're going to have to negotiate with the IRS to pay off that lien. And hopefully there's enough proceeds there to do so. And if there's not enough proceeds, you're going to have to see if the IRS will settle or less, right? And what do you think the chances of that are? It's a maybe, right? They do at times. If it's been a long time, there's no other money on the horizon, they may do that, but it's not going to happen overnight. Those are going to be long and drawn out, and you might even need to hire an accountant or a person that specializes in working with the IRS. So your job in a multiple offer situation, it's not your job to decide for the seller. You're the messenger and communicator. You're the sounding board, and you need to talk about the what ifs. What if there is a problem with the home inspection? What if you need more time for the settlement date? What if you counter, right? When you counter an offer, that nullifies the first offer, right? That means now it's a whole new ballgame. I've had people say to me, well, I want to go back to this one. Well, once you countered, there is no going back. You can ask to go back. That could be your counter. Yes, we'll accept this. But then at that point, it doesn't mean they have to take it. It means you have to re-verify that they're willing to buy at the same terms and conditions. So again, and what are the options a seller has? A seller can reject, right? Which we really don't like that, because when they reject, no one likes to be told no, but we also like them to say, well, hey, work with me here, right? But they can reject, they can accept, or they can counter. Those are the three options you have when presented offers. And that's the same thing you're going to have here in a multiple offer situation. Some are going to get rejected. One, maybe you'll get accepted, maybe two, if you do a backup, right? And, or are they going to counter and go back to everyone and say, give me your highest and best, right? Is that always the best situation? Maybe, maybe not. If I have an offer on the table that my seller really likes and they want to take it, who am I to say, no, don't take that offer? I have to just say to them, look, you accept that offer, we're going to lose these others. You could possibly get more money by countering, but if you counter, you could lose this offer, right? So at that point, they say, okay, I want this one, I want it, you're done. Have them sign it, tell the other agents that they took another offer, and present the written, signed, sealed, accepted offer back to the other agent, because it's not accepted until they really get it back in writing. Although the Code of Ethics and the state associations have said, when you verbally accept, when you say to the buyer's agent, it's an accepted deal, that is considered acceptance, but you do need to follow up. Some agents say, let me just clarify one thing there. It would be a deal unless you said, and this is what I suggest you do, my sellers decided to accept your offer, but it's not a done deal until it's signed and delivered to all parties. Okay, that would open the window for something to happen in between, and you're not obligated then on a verbal acceptance. I think if you ever look at my signature on my email, it says at the very bottom that this email is not considered an acceptance unless it's put in writing and all parties have been delivered copies. So that's from learning the hard way, believe me. Rejection. Have the seller reject all the offers that they will not consider. Someone told me years ago they mark them respectfully rejected. It just sounds a little better. You can just mark it rejected. I like the respectfully rejected. Have the seller initial it. Mark the time and date. Set a deadline to respond and try to stick to it. If you have multiple offers and you've given everyone time and you say to your seller, when do you think we can give people an answer? And he says 5 o'clock today. You don't want it to be 5 o'clock tomorrow. You kind of want to stick to the 5 o'clock today if that's what your seller has indicated, and you try to make sure you meet with them, get it signed, get it back, and give notice to all the parties. And again, make sure it's rejected, initialed with a time and date. Okay. And the time is important in multiple offer situations because it shows when the seller actually saw it, right? And that they did see it and reject it during the time period that you really talked about. And then the last thing is, will they take a backup and which one? And that's a maybe, right? Because a backup offer would be a counter offer to that original backup or secondary contract. So if they're willing to take a backup, go to the other agent and say, look, would you consider your offer being a backup contract? Isn't it nice to have a backup in writing, ready to go? If you have multiple offer situation and the first contract hiccups, if it becomes a problem of some sort, it's nice to say, hey, well, we have a backup offer to both the seller and to the buyer, the original buyer, as well as the secondary buyer, right? It's a nice position to have, and it's probably helpful to your seller to know that someone else is willing to step in and buy if we have a problem. With the appraisal problem, if our contract had been accepted as a backup offer, they probably would have come to us once they found out the appraisal problem. But since they rejected our offer, they probably assumed that we went away and went on to another property. And keep in mind, a backup offer can be withdrawn at any time in writing if it hasn't been accepted in the primary position. But again, consider a backup offer. It may be, or consider 2 backup offers, right? But make sure they're in line. We have backup offer number 1 that you go to, and then we go to backup offer number 2 and so forth. I doubt you're going to get more than 2. You'd be lucky if you get 1 in most cases. The final contract and deliverance. It's an emotional time for the sellers and buyers and the agents. Be courteous, be kind, and be fair, and communicate with all parties. It's going to be in your best interest, in the best interest of your seller, and in the best interest of the other agents and their buyers. All right, questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen. We'll go to face-to-face somewhat, and we'll see what kind of questions we have. Let's see, we have chat. Can you go through the 72-hour kick-out clause, Pete, please? Okay. I don't have that clause in front of me, but basically here's what the 72-hour kick-out is, right? The 72-hour kick-out means that they have a property to sell, right? The buyer has a property to sell. They have given the seller a contract, and there's an addendum in there that's called a kick-out addendum or the property to sell addendum. And basically what that does is that gives the seller the right that if they get another offer that is acceptable, that you would timestamp that offer, and then you would notify the buyer, the first buyer, that as of this time, which is when you deliver them that notice in writing, right? It's not a verbal notice. It must be a written notice, okay? It could be an email, right? It can be a text. It could be, it's an addendum, but they're not going to sign an addendum. But you have to give written notice that says, here's an email. This is your official notice that you have 72 hours to remove your contingency or provide satisfactory other information to the seller that allows them to know that you will move forward without that contingency. Okay. It's very important. The timestamp is important here because when it says 72 hours, that's 3 days, right? 3 days to give them an answer and decide. Some people say, well, that's doesn't count Sundays. To me, 72 hours doesn't say 72 business hours. To me, it's 72 hours, right? So if I give you notice on a Friday, you have to let me know by Monday, right? And you have to let me know in writing, and then my seller has to review it and either accept it, reject it, or, but before you move on to another offer, you must finalize this 72-hour kickout. And we've had disputes here because we've had a buyer say they could buy without selling the property, and they gave a pre-approval. Well, it really, you got to read the print, you read the fine print, because a pre-approval is not a commitment, right? Some kickout addendums say that you must have a commitment, right? And it's up, and it says acceptable to the seller. So your seller could say, look, I don't like that commitment. And that's when we start splitting hairs. And that's when we had attorneys jump in and tell us that we provided a commitment, they met the terms, it's really not the seller's choice. And, you know, here's what happened, folks. When we get attorneys involved, you and I step away. We step back and we say, consult competent legal advice, right? If there's a clause that's disputed in the contract, we are going to say, seek competent legal advice and verify what I think it says, right? I think you have the right to cancel this contract. But if we're being challenged by an attorney, I believe that you should get a second opinion from an attorney, all right? Because me telling you, oh, don't worry about it, you know what that does? That puts you on the line, right? That puts me, the broker, on the line. If an attorney challenges me, the first thing I say is, you know what? I'm not an attorney. And at that point, I say to my seller or buyer, look, I think you, not me, the broker, you need to seek competent legal advice. And if we need a couple of days to do that, let's do it, right? Because a lot of times, you know what? They're not going to want to spend the money. They're going to want me to do it. Well, call your lawyer. No, you're the party to the transaction, and you can't depend on my lawyer to give you advice because you are not his client. I am, right? So at that point, I might need you. So if your buyer or seller doesn't want to spend money on an attorney opinion, then you're probably going to have to suggest that they go with the opinion they got from probably the opposite party. Now, who do attorneys do? Do they give legal opinions that are correct? And the answer is maybe, right? When we go to court, right? How many attorneys are usually in court? If it's a simple case, 2, right? But you know, at the end of the day, one is right and one is wrong, right? So just because an attorney gives you an opinion doesn't mean that it's absolute, but it does mean that we need to seek competent legal advice if we're going to challenge that opinion, because we are not attorneys, we are not accountants, we are not title companies, right? So at that point, you call me and we talk about it, right? That's what we need to do. It says here, what about the second buyer? What do they need? I'm assuming, I don't know if this is part of the 72-hour kickout or a second buyer would be, you know, make sure that they're in a position to perform on the contract that they say they have, right? And you might have to say to them, look, we have to give the seller 72 hours for the response, but it might be more than 72 hours, right? It might be an extra day or so, because sometimes we have to make sure we're clean and clear on what we're doing. So if that takes a little extra time, that's so be it, right? But we have to make sure that we're clear. That's about all I have on multiple offers. I hope that it's been helpful. If you have questions, you can always email me. My email, walt.t, I'll put it in the comments section here. Walt.t@kw.com. Okay, there's my email, right? In the section, walt.t@kw.com. Email me if I'm your broker, right? If you're from an outside company, you need to talk to your broker or manager. But I'm here to help the Keller Williams agents. I'm here to try to keep us out of trouble. I'm here to help you if you're in a multiple offer situation and you need help. So is the rest of our leadership. Bridget, Carol, Scarlett, Bonnie, Becky. We're here to help you. But again, if you want to come to me as your broker, I am here. If I don't answer, leave a message. I will get back to you as soon as I can. I hope this has been helpful. This was recorded, so you could watch it again. If anyone wants copies of the slides, let me know. I'm happy to share my PowerPoint with you. So that's all I have, unless we have further questions. Go out there and sell something. Right? Thank you.